All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a huge geographical mystery, one that's kind of hiding in plain sight. Why is Australia so empty? I mean, really empty. And trust me, it's a question that just gets weirder and more interesting the more you dig into it.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of this thing. You've got a landmass. Get this, 7.7 million square kilometers. It's literally a continent. But the population? It's only about 27 million people. To give you some perspective, the Tokyo metro area has more people than the entire continent of Australia. The math it doesn't feel right, does it?
And that right there, that's the big question we're going to try and answer. Just let that sink in for a moment. A country that's roughly the same size as the continental US, but its population is smaller than Florida's. It's this massive demographic puzzle. And today, we're going to put the pieces together.
So to really get our heads around this, we have to look at it the right way. It's not just a numbers game. It's a real paradox, with a few key pieces to the puzzle. We've got history, geography, and how people have adapted. Let's start digging them up. All right, so first up, let's look at how this whole story began. To solve any mystery, you've got to go back in time, right? The first clues are almost always buried in the past.
Okay, so one of the most important ideas you need to get is something called the tyranny of distance. I mean, for centuries, Australia wasn't just far. For Europeans, it was literally on the other side of the planet. Just getting there was this incredibly long, dangerous, and super expensive trip, and that alone acted like a huge filter. Not many people could, or even wanted to, make that journey.
And you can really see this slow start when you look at the timeline. I mean, the first European settlement doesn't even happen until 1788, and it really took the gold rushes in the 1850s to get any kind of major migration going. By 1901, the whole country's population was still under 4 million. Just think about that. At the same time, the US had over 76 million people. So from day one, Australia was playing catch-up.
So yeah, history is definitely a big piece of the puzzle. That isolation, it meant a really slow, delayed start. But that's not the whole story, is it? It doesn't really explain why, even today, almost everyone is packed into just a few spots. The next clues, well, they lie somewhere else entirely.
And that brings us to what I'd call the prime suspect in this whole mystery, the land itself. We're shifting from history to the incredibly tough, unforgiving geography of Australia. And believe me, this is where the story gets really, really interesting.
Just look at this. The reality of the land is, well, it's brutal. A whopping 70% of the entire continent is either desert or what's called arid land. And we're not just talking a little bit dry. We're talking about huge areas that are basically hostile to human life on a large scale. You just can't build big cities or farms there.
And it's so much more than just a lack of rain. The soil in Australia, it's some of the oldest and most nutrient-poor in the entire world. There aren't any huge river systems like the Mississippi or the Nile to water the interior. And then you throw in the extreme weather, devastating droughts, then massive floods, then terrifying bushfires. It's like the continent itself is actively fighting back against being settled.
You know, this quote really nails what it must have felt like to face that. Imagine being an early settler, pushing inland, hoping for green pastures, and instead, you find this, a beautiful but absolutely brutal landscape. That whole experience completely changed the course of the nation's development. It dictated everything.
So, okay, you have this harsh interior. What's the consequence? How does that change where people live today? Well, it's pretty simple, right? If you can't live in the middle of the country, you get pushed to the edges. And that is precisely what happened in Australia.
And this right here, this is the absolute key. It's called the Great Dividing Range. Think of it like a giant wall running down the East Coast. It catches all that moist air blowing in from the Pacific, dumps a ton of rain on the coast, and leaves everywhere else in its rain shadow. Basically, it's the reason there's this thin, green, livable strip of land and why most of the rest of the country is so dry.
And the result of that, it is absolutely staggering. Get this, 85% of the entire population lives within just 50 kilometers of the coast. That's about 30 miles. It's an incredible concentration of people, all basically huddled together on the very edge of this massive continent.
So here's the real kicker. Australia isn't just an empty country, it's actually one of the most urbanized and coastal-hugging nations in the world. We all have this image of the tough Aussie out in the bush, right? But the reality for almost everyone is city life right on the coast with this enormous, empty continent just behind them. Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've looked at the history, we've looked at the land itself, and we've seen the results.
It's time to solve the empty continent paradox once and for all.
So it really boils down to this. You've got a few key causes that lead to one big effect. First, you have that historical isolation, which meant a super slow start. Then, that small population runs smack into a really harsh environment. And finally, you have these geographic barriers, like the Great Dividing Range, that basically pushed everyone and everything towards the coast. And what do you get? A population crammed onto the coastline. It's a perfect storm, really.
And this is probably the most important thing to take away from all this. The way Australia is populated, it's not some kind of mistake or a failure. It's actually a really smart, logical, and successful way that humans have adapted to a seriously challenging environment. So the real story isn't about the emptiness. The real story is about how people figured out how to thrive on the edges of it.
So I'm going to leave you with one final question to think about. In a world that's getting more and more crowded every day, what does all that empty space in Australia actually mean? Is it a weakness, a vulnerability, or is it the ultimate luxury, something priceless? The answer to that question is probably going to define Australia's future.